So we're going to have a bit of a chat about plant and equipment. For a lot of you it will be a refresher. Some of you it might be new information, but we'll just go through. So Delp had an external plant panel starting in 2003. It's basically for contractors with plant. That Delp basically have a committee that will look at the plant and make sure it's sufficient and safe before the fire season starts. So it ensures contractors have appropriate insurances, a minimum level of OH&S standards, machinery that is compliant, and operators have competencies and fire accreditation. So this is really important. Before they actually go out on the fire line, these must be checked. And we must make sure, as crew leaders, as strike team leaders, incident controllers, that these actually adhere to what they need to. Did anyone know what this is for on FireWeb? So you can actually, you can access the FireWeb and actually do a search for plant, basically, and find out who's accredited and who's on that list. So as incident controllers, we can actually find that out. Delp conduct the pre-season inspection of external private plant and equipment to the fire season. Has anyone seen the mobile plant safety handbook before? Hands up, anyone seen that? Yeah, there's a few here. And the assessment and the strong focus is for the plant and equipment is rollover protection systems, so making sure equipment must have that. Falling object protection systems, and also operator protected guarding. So to be compliant, and Max would know all about this, must make sure that all the equipment that goes out in the fire line has this. So the picture up on the board is the dozer requirements for a fire. So sweeps, the top left there, sweeps to protect the machine, non-certified, polycarbonate windows to protect the operator, so they need to be a plastic polycarbonate, they can't be glass. Operator protective guard, so again, a guard on the back there to make sure that if trees obviously come through or potentially come through, the operator is protected. ROPS, so rollover protection and fall protection, so if the vehicle actually rolls over, there is protection for the operator, and if something happens to actually fall on it, i.e. being a tree, that driver is actually protected. Rear guard to protect the operator as well, in case of falling or sliding trees, and the side protection fit in the form of a woven high tensile steel mesh. So this machine here is compliant for the fireground, and it would be assessed by that assessment panel to make sure it's right to go. Which one's compliant? Pretty obvious. The one on the left or the one on the right? The one on the left is not the one that's compliant, okay? So the one on the right's got all the mesh, it's got the rollover protection, it's got the fall protection on it, so it's ready to go. Plan gauge for fire suppression activities requires the highest level of safety requirements. So there's more safety compliance on something that's going out in the fire line rather than something that's going to be done for civil work. And obviously due to the reasons obviously fall protection stuff, rollover protection, and all the needs that potentially you might have on the fire line. Plant accounts for up to 40% of total fire costs. It's pretty expensive stuff. And we as strike team leaders, sector commanders, incident controllers are in charge of looking after and making sure we know when they're coming and when they're leaving so we can actually sign that off. So we need to manage it. You can see up there a D6 working on the fire line for the day, $5,600 per day. It's $400 per hour for a 14-hour shift potentially, and that does dozer, operator, off-sider and 4x4 to go accompany it out in the fire line. It's pretty expensive, probably second to aircraft, so we need to make sure we manage and keep an eye on where these vehicles are going. A record of firefighting services, so a plant logbook, which I'll show on the next slide, must be completed by the contractor and verified and signed by the sector commander or delegate at the end of every shift. That also could be the incident controller or could be the RDO as well that could actually sign that off to make sure that they are accounted for and make sure that that expense stops when it stops. These records must be then signed by the plant manager if appointed, or duty officer for smaller incidents, so RDO, etc. Again, which one's compliant, which one's not? The right or the left? Max?
Both.
Both? Why?
The one on the left's got the polycarbonate
Window, and the one on the right, it's obviously got the mesh tensile surround on it. So both compliant. It says sector commander up the top, but again, this could be incident controller, etc. We need to brief, task, and supervise the plant in the field. So it could be incident controller at level 1, or as I said, we start to get a little bit larger in a level 2, level 3, could be the sector commander. They're responsible for verifying and authorising all the plant logbooks. So as I said, we need to make sure that we authorise the logbook and make sure we account for these people. Confirms effective communications with all plant and verifies operators understand the task required. So we need to task them and make sure we've got communication with them, that being either a UHF or other means of communication. So communication would be one of the most important things that we're going to require. Make sure they're on the comms plan. Closely monitor work environment, fire behaviour, and ensure tasking is appropriate. So again, thinking about the terrain, where we're going to put them. Is it going to be, we're going to set the objective, is it going to achieve our objective, or is it could be potentially in terrain that might be too dangerous to send a vehicle in. Along with the plant manager, assess suitability of the plant and operator to task, just what we said there about the topographical stuff, and etc, etc. Confirms allocated plant meets DELP safety requirements. What are we going to do if a dozer comes up and you don't think it complies? What would we do? Send it back? Yep, send it back. Don't allow it on the fire ground. As I said, these machines go through that vigorous panel for a reason, to make sure it looks after the safety of them and the machinery on the fire line. Provides maps and details of escape routes to plant operators. So they need to make sure that we need to make sure that they've got a map and they know where the potential escape routes are. If they actually get into trouble, we might get a red flag warning, etc, etc. If unable to comply with these points, do not allow plant to commence work. And it's pretty simple for us. If you're not sure, you don't think it complies, you don't think the person potentially is driving the machine, they might have had a really big night the night before, they might not be in a suitable state to actually start work, don't let them start. And it's up to you. Contractor ensures receipt and understanding of the briefing, tasking, maps and communication. So he needs to make sure, or she needs to make sure that they understand what their tasking is for the day. No self-deployment. It happens at times, and I've seen it happen before, but you need to make sure that they go in and check in with the relevant people, or we make sure we actually account for them on the fire line. Provides and wears PPE at all times, DELP to provide overalls, but other operators, private operators, need to make sure they've got the right PPC. Wears a seatbelt at all times. Difficult one to obviously account for if we can't see them all the time, but we must trust them obviously to do the right thing if that's what they're supposed to be doing. Fatigue management guidelines for DELP. I'm not sure what their guidelines are for that, but they have obviously strict guidelines in for that. Stops work if unclear of tasking or elevated risks, and does not recommence work until resolved. So if they're unsure about some tasking or they're unsure about the environment which they're going into, they must ask the sector commander or whoever they're reporting to, incident controller, before they commence back at work. Completes record of firefighting services logbook daily. Sign and verify with the DELP supervisor. I don't know a lot about this one. I briefly remember it was something that was passed as far as via the plant. Was that right? And then they were supposed to change the windscreen, but they didn't. Yeah. So it was passed to go by the plant. It was supposed to have a perspex screen, which they had back in their workshop. They went out and operated, still had the glass screen in, and obviously a tree's come through the windscreen. So again, probably hard to pick to, I'd imagine, if you're just out and about as a sector commander saying, oh, has that got a... So the plant payment, so the RCTI system, which is the recipient created tax invoice system, is an automatic payment of a timesheet. In Hume only used for level 2 and 3 DELT fires, and CFA make payments direct. So timesheets must be signed in the field, as we've just discussed. This is the external plant hire record of firefighting services. So this is what we need to be signing and making sure they will give to you to make sure that whatever hours they've worked, we can then authorise it. So down the bottom there, you can see the divisional sector commander crew leader, could be RDO as well, and then an authorisation from the plant manager as well. So this is more so for probably a level 2, level 3 incidents. And you can just see over the page here, R&M contracting, Upper Murray, Dozer Cat D7, working from 14:30 to 18:30, authorised from Ian King and verified by Owen Lord. So we've verified the time it's going to be there and what it's actually done. So other items, plane takes time to mobilise the travel. So tracking on, there is tracking on DELT plant and equipment. Supervise your plant, which we've spoken about, supervising and making sure we know it is, and communication is really important. POM is a great asset in any IMT. So plant operations manager is a great asset in IMT and works in the operations sector. Last couple, first attack, recording where the plan is, recording your times and what plan has been engaged. And I think this pretty well is sort of more so the final comment, but yeah, more so probably pointed towards DELT.